Now, it's always exciting when we get guests who have got incredible testimonies, and when you see and hear the story that we're about to share, it will blow your socks off. So I'm really excited to welcome Chris and Denise Arthey. Hi to you both.
Hello.
Hello.
Now, just tell me, so we know that you used to work in gas and oil, Chris, for quite a long time. You don't look this old, but up to 40 years.
Yes, yeah. And it finished, 7 years ago?
Okay. And Denise, you were a teacher for a long time as well.
Yes, I was a teacher, special needs assistant, teaching assistant, supply teacher.
And you're still in the classroom?
And I'm still in the classroom. I still volunteer with little ones, hearing them read.
You see, once a teacher, always a teacher. Is that the case?
I think so, yes.
So, how did you both meet?
Wow, we actually met 50 years ago last weekend.
Wow.
We were both freshers at university. In fact, we had a reunion last weekend with all the blokes I used to share a house with. So we were all together again, celebrating 50 years. Yeah, so it's been a while.
And your life changed in 2008 completely. Now, you're on a road trip, and you were presumably enjoying this road trip. It was a holiday of a lifetime, but something truly awful happened.
One of my lifelong ambitions was to ride motorcycle road trips in the USA. So having a US assignment, that was my big chance. So 16th of May 2008, we were living the dream. We were on our road trip, riding a Harley-Davidson Road King from Houston down towards the Mexico border and the Rio Grande. And we were on Highway 35. Beautiful spring day. As you say, we were loving the road trip, in living, just really enjoying ourselves. And then, without warning, a drunk driver doing over 80 miles an hour in the other lane veered across and hit us virtually head on. So we were in a head-on collision with a combined speed of over 135 miles an hour on a motorcycle. And we both lost our left leg. We survived.
What do you remember about the impact?
I remember absolutely nothing, which I think is a blessing. I remember more than Chris from the actual day. I mean, I can remember the journey. I can remember stopping for coffee, stopping for lunch. And then it was after lunch that the accident happened. The only recollection I've got at all of the accident is while I was lying on the ground, is just sort of like hazy faces over me, and that's all I can remember. The next thing I woke up was in hospital in intensive care. Yeah,
I don't remember anything of the accident either, and I lost sort of 2 or 3 days before the accident as well, so memory was white.
Which must be, when you wake up in that hospital bed, you must, for a few moments, not know what is going on at all.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I don't ever remember not knowing that I'd lost my leg. So I don't know if they, if the nurses sort of, talk to you about it when you're sort of semi-conscious. I don't know. But I can remember looking down at bedclothes and they were just flat on the left-hand side, and a huge plaster cast on my arm and being in a lot of pain, not being able to move, and knowing that Chris was more severely injured, just didn't know how badly. So we often it's a bit of a nightmare.
Presumably, you'd have been in separate wards, a male ward and a female ward. What was the communication that you had? Oh, it was the same ward?
No, it was separate rooms. This is America. We were in separate rooms in ICU.
Right. So you were in separate rooms. What was the first communication that you had with each other after the accident? And was it almost a bit like, look what's happened to me, oh, look what's also happened to me?
No, it was interesting because our youngsters came out and Chris's brother came out and our pastor came to see us. So we had people who were visiting both of us. Now I was a bit forgetful, but otherwise I was, quite alert. So I was soon told how Chris was, and 10 days in, the leg was killing him. So
I was in a medically induced coma for 10 days.
So the doctors had our eldest, Ben, and I sign for Chris's amputation. So although somebody took me down to see Chris fairly early on, it was really only after the amputation and Chris had come round that we were able to actually communicate and talk. And by that time, Chris knew that I'd also lost my leg. And obviously he realised he'd lost his leg. So it was a very strange conversation.
Yeah,
I was just about to say, where... I'm a bit speechless on that, because where do you start? It's almost, you're both absolutely traumatised, mentally and physically beyond belief. And then you both have to sort of come to the terms that you've lost a limb, but also you've both lost the same one. Where do you start? How do you open up a conversation like that?
Yeah, you have to understand that there isn't a moment when you're conscious and you're coping with stuff. Denise's case, it wasn't a coma, but I was in a coma for so many days, and then they brought me out of the coma. So over the course of days, there's this realization that, I think I know I've been in a motorcycle accident. I think I understand I've lost a limb. I think Denise has lost a limb as well. There's extreme pain, lots of confusion, lots of frustration, and it took days to try and figure out what was happening. Because in that as well, there was severe brain trauma after the coma. When I started rehabilitation, I couldn't read a clock, I couldn't read a calendar, I couldn't use a mobile phone. So I was sort of fighting my way back into a conscious world for some time. So it was this sort of gradual unfolding of what must have happened. It took a while.
Yeah, and we did have, we had the youngsters, they were going backwards and forwards. They were out for 3 weeks in the end, and the pastor was visiting once a week, so he was able to spend some time with them and staying overnight. And as I say, Chris's brother and some colleagues were coming down to be. So I had knowledge. I had more knowledge than Chris. I had knowledge of how Chris was doing. Obviously, in the very early days, he wasn't doing well, but once the amputation had happened, he recovered very quickly. And then it was the problems of the brain injury rather than anything else. Everything else we were fighting together.
So rehabilitation wise, I want to touch upon first of all the mental rehabilitation, because when you've been through trauma like that, did it involve flashbacks? Did it involve depression, anxiety?
Well, certainly flashbacks, in that things that we thought we had forgotten sort of emerged into consciousness again. So certainly there was the flashbacks. Depression. Well, to be honest, if you're in a situation like ours, things can look pretty bleak. And there was a lot of this just horror of, well, that's the end of that then, and feeling lost and frustrated. In Denise's case, a lot of anxiety, because Denise didn't know if she was going to get back anything like the husband that she remembered, because I was so traumatized mentally. And how do I cope being in a strange country with strange medical systems, and I'm not at home, and I've got to deal with all this on my own. It wasn't It wasn't a bed of roses, was it?
No, I think it was easier for me than Chris, because I hadn't lost the running. I hadn't lost something that I was passionate about that was very physical. And also, my grandfather was an amputee. So I had this background knowledge, you know, I mean, he was World War One, lost his leg in the trenches when he was a teenager. And so I had this knowledge that, you know, he lived a perfectly normal life. And obviously prosthetics are a lot better now than they were then. So if I could just hang on, I knew that, you know, we could, with prosthetics, live a normal life again. So I think that helped me a lot. And of course, I didn't have the mental problems that Chris did. So that meant that I could communicate with people around me, and like the hospital chaplain and people from church and family, a lot better than Chris could.
I think the thing that I found the hardest was just complete loss of identity. There are a number of aspects to that. I mean, I like to think I was a careful motorcyclist, never crashed before in my life. And now not only have I had a horrendous crash, which at that point I didn't know that we'd been hit by a drunk driver. I just knew that we'd been in a crash. And it had happened with Denise on the pillion, which was even worse. So that was, you know, my safe riding was completely blown. As far as work was concerned, I was obviously working with some phenomenal engineers and project managers. I used to think I was maybe holding my own and enjoying my career. But then with this mental incapacity after the accident, I wasn't exactly a vegetable, but I wasn't far off it. And I was conscious that I'd lost all that. And then, of course, there was the running. I mean, I used to love my marathons, my endurance sports, and now I've got one leg. So sort of that's the end of. So all of these aspects of my life that I had felt defined me had been taken away. And well, gosh, you know, what am I now? Who am I? And that's the point at which I had to make a choice that, you know, even without those things that I felt defined me, I'm still a child of God, I'm still known, I'm still loved, I'm still important. And choosing that and hanging on to that sort of helped me survive because so much had gone.
It's interesting, you hung on to that and I hung on to the Bible verse, Romans 8:28, you know, all things will work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. And I did write that out and got the pastor to pin that up in Chris's ward when he was in the coma, because, you know, it's hanging on to things like that that really pulled us through.
I guess it's easier said than done, isn't it? Now, Denise, you mentioned about your granddad lost a limb because he was in the war. Now, that may be something that you could hand over a lot easier and think, well, actually, he was fighting for his country. But when your life has been changed like it has because a person had had a drink and got into a car, there must have been a lot of anger there.
I'm going to surprise you now. No, there wasn't. There was no bitterness actually about that. I mean, it wasn't directed personally at us. You know, it was someone who made, you know, a really bad choice or had been making bad choices. And was drunk and drove, and, you know, we were in the wrong place, you know, at the wrong time. So no, I didn't feel angry. It's one of those things. And I think because, you know, we say in the book that we wrote, you know, we went on, obviously from that moment, we just forgave the guy, even though we hadn't met him at that stage. And it was like a gift to us. You know, we just knew that we didn't want to be trapped in anger and bitterness, because, you know, we got enough on our plates. You know, we wanted to put all that energy that we had into recovering. And also, I think when we actually expressed it to our children, our youngsters, when we asked them, you know, how do you feel about the drunk driver? You know, they said, well, actually, it was up to you how you process this. It's not up to us. We were just very sad that this had happened. But we were so glad that you did forgive, because it didn't change who you were.
Mm.
And, you know, and it just helped in our relationship together. So, no, I was never really angry. I mean, I just lay there thinking, actually, I'd rather lose a leg than have gone through drinking and causing this to someone else, you know, because I know how difficult I would have found it to forgive myself.
Yeah, we have to be we have to be very careful about, you know, how we talk about this lack of bitterness and forgiveness, because it can easily come across as preaching. You know, we're good Christians. We know the Lord's Prayer, forgive others as we forgive those that sin against us. And it can sound as if we're just doing the right Christian thing. But in this case, we talked about it. We looked for anger and bitterness, and there honestly was none there. And as Denise said, it was as if that was a gift to us to help us to cope. So now when we get upset with people, things go wrong. We pray for the gift of forgiveness and lack of bitterness that we received in Texas, because we know what a huge difference it made to our lives then. It's just so important.
That's the thing, and I was just about to say that as Christians, we all would like to think that if somebody does something bad to us, we'd forgive them. And we've all heard the phrase that actually if you don't forgive, you're just causing yourself even more pain and hurt. Now, that's easier said than done. And I was listening to your story just then, and I was thinking, if that happened to me, if my life was changed so drastically like yours has been, you were talking, Chris, about running. That was your passion. It was your way of keeping fit, your way of clearing your head and stuff. Denise, you were a teacher. All of these things that you presume that you wouldn't be able to do again, but we will, of course, move on to in a moment the fact that you did continue to do those things. I don't know how I'd personally have handled that. And I don't know if I could have not have, if I could have let go to the anger that I felt to this person and that notion of actually, why was it me? Why was I in the wrong place at the wrong time? Did you have any of those feelings?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say, if you had told us when we left England to go to America that this was going to happen, we would have hung on to Gatwick Terminal building with white knuckles, because we would have said we couldn't possibly have coped. So just like you, Gareth, you just don't know how things are going to be. Now, looking back a few years later, we can say that, God was very good. But we had no idea that we were able to cope with the sort of things that we did. And whether we could cope with, if it had been slightly worse, you just don't know. You can only deal with the situation that you're in. And then moving on to the question that you finished with, the why me? I mean, that we have to be okay with not understanding everything. I mean, this why me, why us question, we went over that endlessly, and we drew the conclusion that we just don't know. So you just have to hang on to that Corinthians scripture. Now we see just a poor reflection, then we shall see clearly. Then now I know only in part, but then I shall know fully, even as I'm fully known. We just got to hang on to that scripture and believe that it's true. So for now, I have this list of things that Chris does not understand. And this sort of why me, why us question is right at the top of the list. When it's my time to go to the pearly gates, I'm taking that list with me because I want some answers. But because of that scripture, I've got a feeling that when I get there, I'll toss it away, because then it won't matter anymore. But for now, that list is really important to me. I can put it to one side, and I don't have to understand everything right now, and that keeps me on the level. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met anybody who has compiled a list of questions to ask Jesus when they meet him before. We've all got them in our mind, but I don't think I've ever met anybody who's actually physically wrote them down. But I can almost now feel the nation going, do you know what? I might give that a try as well, because I have a few to ask. This is a strange one, but as parents, are you glad it was you rather than your children?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you've asked about the forgiveness. I think that would have been a lot harder to forgive if it had been one of our 3 youngsters who had been hit by a drunk driver. Yeah. I think that would have been really hard. And I mean, they were amazing. You know, as I said, they were very sad that it happened, but they were at a time in their lives where they're all going separate directions, and they just really bonded together, and they were tremendous support. I mean, 2 of them came out in their holidays, you know, just to be with us, because we were in wheelchairs at the beginning, you know, just to help us get around, as well as everything the church did and neighbours did. So, yes, I think as a parent particularly, a lot easier that it was us and not them.
And moving forward now, because we were talking about the recovery. Now, the recovery went so well that actually, Chris, you became a British sporting champion. Tell us about this.
Yeah. Well, miracles still happen, Gareth. Watch out. Yes, I got my first running leg a year and a half after the accident. Learned to run again with difficulty. Got a cycling leg, learned to cycle again. Joined.
Can I just ask there quickly, because I think everybody's confused by, he said, I had a running leg and a cycling leg. My knowledge on limbs isn't good as it is, but when you said that you've got a different one for different sports, I didn't know that was a thing. I thought that you just had a leg for a leg, but you've got different ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, between us, we've got 7 legs.
And where are they kept?
In the garage, in cupboards.
Are they really?
Well, we've got the 2 right legs, which are the original equipment. We kept those, so that's 2. We've both got a walking leg, which we're wearing now,
and that's where I stop. I've just got 2.
So that's 4. Then I've got one of these Blade Runner running legs with a carbon fibre sprung foot, and I use that for running. So that's 5. I've got the cycling leg, which has got a freewheeling knee, and it takes a shoe that clips onto the left pedal so that it doesn't offer any resistance when I'm cycling. So that's 6. I swim without a leg, so that's not an extra leg. And then I've got another leg that I use for trekking. When I did Everest Base Camp, I used a trekking leg for that. So that's 7. No, it's interesting because sometimes we speak in schools, and youngsters think, oh, these robotic legs, they're incredible. They make you so fast and you can do all these amazing things. And we say, well, think about it for a minute. Think about the original equipment, the legs that you've got. I mean, they grow with you. You don't have to maintain them at all. They'll do everything that all these other legs do and more, and you don't even think about it. So the original equipment is pretty impressive. Look after it.
Absolutely. So let's go back to the actual sporting that you've been doing then. So you became a champion. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually not this year, but last year I was British para-triathlon champion in the severe leg impairment category. So yeah, I got a gold medal.
Wow.
But
people are thinking, how can this be possible? An old guy being national champion? Because then I was 67 then, wasn't I? Yeah. But there are very few above the knee amputees that are interested in doing endurance sports. Right. So it really depends who turns up on the day. And that particular day, I was the only one that showed up.
But Chris, what you should do is to not share that last bit with people and just say, yes, I am. That's what you need to be doing.
Yeah, well, full disclosure, and also I do what I do not because I want to be national champion or anything, but I just love training and racing even now, and yeah, I like to talk about it. So yeah, no airs or graces. I'm not as fast as I should be.
Do you still have those down days where you wake up and you're choosing which leg you want to use on the side of the bed? Do you ever have those times of thinking, actually, I wish things had been different?
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot less now, because you just get used to putting your leg on and, you know, getting on with your day. But even now, it's just like if I'm in school and something happens, a child falls over in the playground or something, it's just, I can't get there fast enough, or I can't really assist. I mean, we've got 2 lovely grandchildren now, and, you know, obviously picking them up is not, you know, it's not quite as, well, it doesn't feel as safe to us. It probably is safe, but, you know, and, you know, we tried playing frisbee with she was 5 then, wasn't she, in the garden? And, you know, it goes out of reach, and then it's just very difficult. And yes, we still very occasionally fall over. And I think it's the frustration now, not necessarily down because of it. In the early days, yes, it was, again, because you were coping with pain as well. And I remember one day where we had a real down, so we did what?
We were both down together. Because normally if one of us was down, the other one can encourage. But we had this day, we were both down.
Yeah, because that's the amazing thing. We both got, you know, the identical loss of leg, so we can help each other, you know. But one day we were really down, so because we did what you're told to do, we phoned the pastor, who, bless him, dropped everything. And he was only 30 at the time. I mean, it's amazing the maturity he had. And he dropped everything, came round, and he just listened, which is probably the best thing you can do when people are struggling. And he said something amazing. He said, you know, through the frustration, the pain, everything you're having, you know, God's building a platform. You will be able to reach people that he said I can't reach, because you've been through it. And I think, you know, that has been something that, you know, has really spurred us on with talking about, you know, what happened and our recovery and everything and God's part in it, because it's really true that we can actually share with people and say, you know, we understand what you're going through, especially with limb loss. You know, we understand the grief, we understand what you feel you've lost, we understand that you feel you've aged, everything takes you a lot longer, and but you will get through this. And this is what other amputees said to us, and it's just a huge comfort.
Now, the full story is available in your book. It's called Highway 35, and just search it out. You'll be able to find it. Just before we go, you actually had the opportunity to meet the person who was driving the car.
Yes, there was a trial a year after the accident. It was a sentencing trial. The drunk driver had pled guilty. And it was a jury trial to give him the appropriate sentence. And after the sentencing was over, he asked the judge if he could speak to us. And so they asked us, and we said, yeah, we're happy to talk. And he came over with tears in his eyes and said, you know, can you ever forgive me for what I've done? I can't give you your legs back, but, you know, I'm so sorry. And by that stage, we'd had that conversation, and there was no bitterness. So we were able to forgive him.
Yeah, and then at the end of 2012, when we left America, actually we went to the Middle East after that with Chris's work. But when we left America, he asked if he could see us again. So we had lunch with him and his wife, and we were able to just reassure him that, you know, as far as we were concerned, he was forgiven. But we were very concerned that he needed to find forgiveness for himself. And, you know, we exchanged emails over the years and Christmas. And when his probation finished at the end of 2019, he wrote to us, and it was a lovely email. He just said, thank you for your support, your kindness, because he said it's really helped me cope emotionally over the years. And then we went back to Texas last October, and again, we had a meal with him and his wife, and they were very easy company. And right at the end of the meal, he surprised us because he said, when you're next in Texas, please come and stay with my wife and I at our home. And we just thought, wow, we're just discovering the remarkable power of forgiveness.
Yeah.
Incredible.
That's truly incredible. Where
it is. It's a miracle.
So, presumably, you will take him up on that offer when you're next over there?
I wouldn't be surprised.
I wouldn't be surprised, yes. Well, he may be over in Europe sometime with his wife because he wants to show her Europe. So.
Yeah, he's retired now and he wants to do more travelling. And he knows that if they come to England, he'd be welcome to come and stay here.
Wow. Is he a Christian?
This is hard to say.
Not yet.
Well, we do know that his wife is a lovely Catholic Christian, and when we had the meal with them in October last year, he talked a little bit about his background, and it left us thinking, well, if he hasn't found the Lord, he's not far away. Obviously, it's not our place to pry. It's his business, not ours. But he signed an email, "Bless you," at one point.
Yeah, so we wondered.
And you think, I really, really pray that there is something going on there, because if there is, then there's hope that he can reach that point of forgiving himself, and then, like us, he can move on with his life. So that's our prayer.
So, as I said, this is all available in the book. You can get it wherever you'd usually get your books from. It is Highway 35. And thank you for sharing. Thank you for your openness and being so honest about all this, because there will be people who are watching this, listening to it, and maybe they need to forgive somebody. Maybe they feel that their life has been changed by a decision that somebody else made, and they had no say in that, and maybe it's time to forgive them, and they can use you as an example of how that can be taken to the greatest of extremes, actually, where you could potentially be having the man staying in your house eventually who changed your life forever. You tour the country giving your testimony, so if you would like to see where the couple are, then simply go to chrisarthey.co.uk. That's chrisarthey.co.uk, and you can see loads more details on there, and you can also find out the next place that they're going to be. It's been a real blessing speaking with you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Nice to be here.